Welcome back to Marked Manhwa, where four idiots have finally discovered a floor Rowan did not map. The injured four stare up as the last shaft aperture seals beneath tons of black stone. The four continue falling through black stone and bronze debris in the chain formed above. Rowan sees a sloped rubble fan below instead of flat stone and shouts toward Brienne. Brienne rotates beneath Liora and opens her battered round shield into the fall. The shield clips a bronze rib and bleeds sideways speed while Brienne grunts from the impact. Rowan cuts his bedroll free and knots its strap through a hanging conduit loop. The improvised drag line catches, wrenching Rowan leftward and bruising his ribs. Liora releases Rowan long enough to wrap both arms around Cassia before the line recoils. Cassia uses one tiny force spark to sever a sharp dangling cable beside Leora's face. Brienne strikes the rubble slope shield first and her left knee folds under the load. Liora and Cassia land against Brienne's angled shield instead of the bare floor. Rowan hits last, rolls badly, and ends with his pack pinning him beside the others. Dust settles over four breathing, injured people with no miraculous clean escape. Liora lights a hooded lamp and orders everyone to remain exactly where they landed. She checks Brienne's left knee and finds strain and swelling but no break. Brienne braces the unstable rubble with her shield while Liora wraps the knee tightly. Liora closes the shallow cut over Rowan's left ribs, then stops before exhausting herself. Rowan binds his ribs over the remaining bruise and tests one careful breath. Cassia tries to lift her right arm and pain forces it back against her side. Liora sets Cassia's bruised shoulder in a cloth sling without spending more mana. A sharp stone cuts Leora's right palm while she retrieves a dropped bandage tin. Cassia silently ties the bandage around Leora's palm using her good left hand. Liora admits her mana is below half and reserves the rest for emergencies. Rowan marks north and the rubble slope on the floor so their geography stays fixed. The group reaches the wall mechanism through a narrow safe lane beside the landing debris. Cassia identifies 7 dead counterweight channels around a bronze iris. Rowan appraises the worn gear teeth and receives only material condition and load direction. Cassia translates the central command as controlled descent, not a passenger lift. She sends a fingertip force spark into the return socket with her left hand. One tooth twitches less than a grain while the enormous counterweight remains still. Cassia calculates the mana required and erases the hopeful first figure. Brienne offers to lever the gear, but Rowan shows the cracked, load-bearing axle. Liora asks for the honest answer before anyone spends strength they cannot replace. Cassia states that her entire mana pool cannot reverse even the first locking ring. Behind them, the last dust falls from the sealed shaft and confirms there is no climb. Back on the stable shelf, Rowan inventories water, rope, chalk, dried roots, and one dented cookpot. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Brienne accuses Cassia of translating the Episode 7 command after Rowan called release. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Cassia answers that Brienne's shield position drove them toward the weakest plate seam. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Rowan sets the cookpot over a lamp flame and begins chopping dried turnip during the accusation. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Both women stop long enough to ask why he is making stew beneath a collapsed dungeon. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Rowan explains that cold injured people make stupid decisions faster than warm injured people. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Liora assigns Brienne to ration water and Cassia to calculate lamp time. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Brienne admits she stayed anchored one heartbeat after Liora ordered her to move. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Cassia admits she trusted a complete translation before testing the mechanism beneath it. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Rowan tastes the thin stew and apologizes to cuisine in general. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. The four eat from shared cups while the argument becomes a list of rules for the next hazard. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Cassia adds that no one activates ancient civic infrastructure without confirming both meanings. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Brienne adds that retreat calls outrank pride, including hers. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. A distant bronze chime answers through the East Passage, interrupting the fragile truce. Apparently, survival is easier once everyone has eaten Rowan's legally questionable stew. Rowan chalks an east arrow beside the camp before the group leaves the landing chamber. The narrow passage shows worn handrails at two different heights, proof it once carried citizens. Cassia translates a repeated civic mark as Concord District rather than temple or tomb. Liora finds dried blue moss that grew toward air moving from ahead. Brienne tests each stair with her shield rim to protect her strained knee. The corridor widens and a cold updraft extinguishes the lamp for one breath. Cassia relights it with a tiny spark directed exactly onto the wick. Rowan notices paved drainage gutters continuing beneath centuries of mineral crust. The four reach a broken balustrade and see darkness opening beyond it. A vast, buried city fragment appears below. Terraces, bridges, towers, and bronze conduit lines. Muted turquoise residue travels through a few distant channels like a slow pulse. Cassia names the architecture Elendrian Concord and forgets to sound superior. Liora notices homes, market arches, and a child-height drinking basin among the ruins. The overlook cracks behind them, forcing the group onto the descending city stair. The descending stair ends in a circular utility chamber beneath the first city terrace. Bronze conduits branch from four empty standing alcoves into the streets beyond. Cassia reads civic labels for hearth, healing, warning, and communal resolve. Rowan uses appraisal on a cold junction and sees residue tagged effective transfer. He describes the label without pretending to understand its theory. Cassia realizes the conduits transmitted both mana and emotional states between registered citizens. Liora touches her own existing crest through her blouse as a distant line answers faintly. Brienne's established crest warms under her armor at the same moment. Cassia orders both women away from the open junction before the reaction deepens. Rowan covers the exposed joint with a fallen ceramic insulator. The response fades, proving their bonds can be sensed but not explaining them. Cassia records the observation while explicitly refusing to theorize without more evidence. A civic plaque warns that unregistered souls must report to a registrar. Heavy stone feet begin moving in the street above. An eyeless, tall construct steps down from a wall niche into the east street. Two squat wardens unfold behind it, sealing the route back to the conduit chamber. The registrar opens a chest aperture that scans with pale amber light. System-like civic lettering classifies Rowan as an unregistered soul. The scan moves across Liora and Brienne and hesitates at their existing crests. Cassia remains unbonded and receives the same unregistered classification as Rowan. Brienne forms a shield line despite the tremor in her wrapped left knee. Liora pulls Cassia behind the shield before the first warden lunges. The warden's stone arm strikes the shield and drives Brienne back one full step. Rowan rolls a cookpot lid down the gutter and the second warden turns toward the moving reflection. Cassia identifies the constructs as civic soul wardens following intact registration law. The registrar emits a capture order rather than a killing order. Rowan leads a controlled retreat toward a street lined with exposed conduit joints. The three constructs pursue without tiring while Brienne's need visibly worsens. Rowan sees every pursuing construct place its feet beside the same conduit junctions. Appraisal identifies cracked ceramic at joint 3, but offers no tactical instruction. Rowan chalks a circle around joint 3 and tells Cassia to hit the hairline gap. Cassia protests that her spark cannot damage stone while aligning her left-handed focus. Her fingertip spark enters the crack and interrupts the pulse beneath the first warden. The warden locks mid-stride as its chest aperture goes dark. Brienne uses the frozen body as cover instead of wasting stamina attacking it. The second warden changes lanes and Rowan notices a loose bridge clip at joint 5. Liora throws Rowan's chalk exactly where he points, marking the clip from behind cover. Cassia hits the white mark with another tiny spark despite the moving target. The conduit pulse jumps sideways and the second warden turns on the registrar's capture beam. The registrar swats its own warden aside, breaking the redirect but opening the route ahead. Cassia's casting hand shakes from repeated precision, and she admits she has 2 sparks left. The party escapes through an archive door while the registrar tears free of the misrouted line. The archive door closes on the registrar's stone fingers as collapsed ceramic shelves frame one intact black glass cradle. Cassia reads an Academy-disputed author name engraved above the cradle. She finds a primary source Concord seal and an intact date sequence beneath it. Rowan asks what the record proves instead of touching the mechanism. Cassia explains it proves her expelled thesis correct and the Academy's public rebuttal fraudulent. The cradle opens only after her tiny spark traces 3 microscopic release points. A palm-length black archive shard rises, gold text moving inside it. Cassia removes the shard with her left hand and holds years of vindication against her chest. Liora quietly says the Academy would have to restore Cassia's name. Cassia admits they would have to publish her work and retract the charge of fabrication. Brienne checks the shaking west wall while Cassia wraps the shard in fieldbook cloth and knots it to her belt. The registrar begins battering the archive door as the chamber's bridge exit unlocks. The group enters the narrow bridge with Rowan first, Liora second, Cassia third, and Brienne anchoring last. The registrar breaks through behind Brienne and steps onto the bridge approach. Rowan reaches the far platform and sees the bridge supports pulse in sequence with the construct. A support drops beneath Liora and her injured right hand slips from the rail. Cassia catches Leora's left wrist with her good hand while bracing on one knee. The archive shard swings from Cassia's belt over the void and jams against a collapsing rail gap. Its cord pulls Cassia backward while Liora hangs below the bridge edge. Cassia sees the intact proof glowing inches from her free hand. Liora tells Cassia to take the shard because she cannot hold both. Cassia cuts the archive cord with Rowan's dropped utility knife instead. The priceless shard falls through the ancient city, still glowing as it disappears beyond recovery. Freed from the drag, Cassia gets both hands around Leora's wrist despite her injured shoulder. She screams for help without disguising fear or pride. The bridge tears loose under Cassia's knees while Liora remains suspended. Brienne sees the anchor chain can delay the registrar or let her reach Cassia, but not both. She loops the chain around the bridge post, abandons her shield, and leaves the anchor position. The registrar snaps the unattended chain one link at a time behind her. Brienne crosses 2 failing spans on her strained left knee toward Cassia. Rowan lies flat on the far platform and catches Leora's other arm. Liora kicks against the wall and helps Rowan lift rather than waiting helplessly. Cassia's bruised shoulder gives and her right elbow slides off the broken edge. Brienne dives and catches Cassia's right forearm with both hands. Cassia stares at the woman she blamed while Brienne's knee buckles against the bridge. Brienne tells Cassia that retreat outranks pride and pulls anyway. Liora reaches the platform and immediately grips Cassia's left wrist beside Rowan. Together, they drag Cassia across as Brienne leaps from the final collapsing slab. The 4 reach a round lift platform while the broken bridge falls away behind them. Cassia finds an emergency inscription missing every third symbol from surface erosion. Rowan appraises the lift and learns only that 3 pressure locks remain mechanically viable. He notices 3 unworn footprints painted into the dust where citizens once stood. Cassia translates the surviving text as shared burden, witnessed purpose, and upward refuge. Rowan positions Brienne, Liora, and himself on the 3 pressure marks. Nothing happens because Cassia remains outside the civic witness ring. Rowan spots a 4th tiny socket at the translation lectern, polished by fingertips rather than feet. Cassia realizes the registrar supplied authorization with a precise current, not raw mana. She places her last tiny spark into the socket while reading the restored command. Rowan confirms all 3 locks retract in the order shown by worn gear teeth. The platform rises as the registrar reaches the edge and misses Cassia by inches. Bronze shutters close beneath them, severing the construct's pursuit. The lift carries the exhausted 4 toward moving air and a remote Dawnwell spillway. The emergency lift opens into a damp upper spillway where early dawn enters through roots. Rowan checks the route and confirms they are far from the collapsed descent chamber. Liora sits Brienne down and retightens the swollen knee wrap. Cassia finds the cut archive cord still hanging empty from her belt. No one offers a cheap promise that the lost shard can be recovered. Brienne returns Cassia's fieldbook cloth without mentioning their earlier blame. Cassia says the city requires systematic study by someone minimally competent. Rowan agrees that temporary cooperation is over and waits for her actual question. Cassia asks to join the party permanently for purely academic reasons. Liora smiles and asks whether permanent means she will obey retreat calls. Cassia says she will submit written objections after obeying them. Rowan accepts her as a permanent party member without offering soul binding. Brienne extends a hand. Cassia takes it with her uninjured left hand. The four limp toward daylight together, one shield and one priceless proof lighter. As Liora helps Brienne stand, both existing crests pulse faintly through torn clothing in the same rhythm. Rowan's sternum mark answers beneath his ripped undershirt when he steadies them. Cassia compares the three synchronized marks with her soul conduit notes. She checks her own left hip and finds no crest, confirming she is not part of the network. Liora notices Cassia staring and instinctively covers her collarbone mark. Cassia asks how long the three of them have carried linked soul signatures. Rowan attempts to call them matching dungeon rashes. Brienne tells Rowan that explanation has never worked once. Cassia opens her field book to a clean page and blocks the route to daylight. She announces that Episode 9's first agenda item is the Impossible Bond Network. Cassia holds her open notebook beneath the three synchronized existing crests and smiles with dangerous scholarly delight. If Cassia interrogating three suspicious soul marks sounds fun, like, comment, subscribe, and continue to Episode 9.